How's it going, Goomy Gang? And welcome back. I hope you guys are doing awesome. Now, if you're like me, the Lockwood 680 just hasn't been hitting the same in Warzone. We don't have 10 pellets anymore. Our sprint to fire is kind of whack. It's just not super great. It's still an amazing shotgun, great damage and fire rate, but something needs to be spiced up a bit. And luckily, we have the Modern Warfare 2 pump actions, the Brysons. And I'm here to tell you guys, oh my lord, these things can in fact give the Lockwood 680 a run for its money in more ways than just one. So in today's video, I'm going to cover these amazing pump actions and share with you guys why you should use them and kind of how they're just better than the Lockwood 680 in some ways. So if that sounds good to you, make sure to check the timestamps below in the description if you want to hop to a certain part of the video. I will have class setups for the Brysons as well, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. So let's just go ahead and get into it with a basic overview of the Lockwood 680 real quick, just as a refresher. Now, the Lockwood 680 has been sort of the pump action of choice for pretty much all of Warzone 3's life cycle. It does 200 damage up close out to about 6.8 meters, which is kind of absurd because the other shotguns don't get damage that good nearly that far. The pellet cap is actually what's keeping it at 200. It can actually do more damage, but there's a hard cap at 200, so that's why in Warzone you only do 200. But after 6.8 meters, it drops to about 120 damage, so it's no longer a 2-shot, it's a 3-shot. That extends out to about 10.5 meters, and then after that, out to its last range, it only does 68 damage, which is a 5-shot kill with a pump action. That's disgustingly terrible. Never challenge people that far with this thing. I promise you it's gonna ruin your day in more ways than one. So the damage is great, but the mobility is kind of meh. It's not super great, it's not terrible, but with the recent best class I posted, its sprint to fire speed, which is really important on shotguns, is about 175 milliseconds, and we don't have that 10 pellet build, which even though I had a weaker sprint to fire speed, it made up for it by having that super great consistency. Now we don't have that. We only have 6 pellets with each barrel, which is not the greatest. It's not the worst, but it's not the greatest. And the sprint to fire at 175 milliseconds for this build can be a little bit hard to make it work if you're super aggressive. It's not impossible, it's just something that can get you a little messed up and can kind of lead to some getting caught with your pants down sort of moments. So the Lockwood is a solid shotgun, but now let's talk about the Brysons and why I have fallen in love with these things all over again. So both of the Brysons boast a similar damage range and profile, and this is because for some reason when Modern Warfare 3's integration happened, the Bryson 800 kind of got adjusted to where now it just sort of falls in line directly with the 890, at least in terms of the damage and the ranges. So you basically have identical 2-shot and 3-shot ranges and all that, at least for the base gun. Now the Bryson 800 does have the rifled barrel, which gives it more range than the 890, but I figured I would point that out there. So up close, the Bryson 800 and 890 can both deal 200 damage up to about 2.8 meters, give or take a few tenths of a meter. Then out to about 5.8, they only deal 160 to chest. Now, it's not dealing the 200 that the Lockwood 680 was out to 6 meters or whatever it was, 6.8 I believe, but this thing does 160, so it's still possible to 2-shot. You just have to hit chest shots, which isn't super difficult. That's center mass, and with the pellet damage mechanic introduced like months and months and months ago, it's going to help with your consistency. And with the rifled barrel, the 800 can 2-tap out to about 7.4 meters, and the tac fire will put the 890 out to about 6.9. Now that's better than the base Lockwood, but of course the Lockwood has barrels that you can attach onto it, and with the big barrel that you can equip on it, it basically takes your 2-shot out to about 8.5 meters, which is still better than the Brysons, but again, we have other things to talk about besides damage and range. One of the things that the Brysons can do so much better than the Lockwood is damage at range. In its next range is the Brysons can still 3-tap and deal about 120 damage with chest shots, and that's out to about the 12-meter mark or so. After that, it takes 4, unless you mix in some headshots, which you can get 3-shot kills with, but that's not super practical. So that's one of the big things I like the Brysons, is that at ranges, you can actually kind of start to pick people's health down, unlike with the Lockwood where you just don't want to be caught dead shooting that thing super far. This thing, with its spread and with the pellet damage you can do, it's actually not bad, so you can kind of pick people off, especially if they're flying in overhead. Sometimes you can get some 3-shot kills, and it's actually really, really reliable. Another reason these things are so good is the pellet count. No longer do we have 6 pellets, we have the normal 8, the COD standard, and this makes it feel so much more consistent, especially up close, because 8 pellets is much better than 6. Not as good as 10, but I will take 8. Also, the mobility is on par and even better in a lot of cases than the Lockwood 680. Take for example the sprint to fire speed of that hammer forged long barrel build. Now on the Brysons, with the build that I recommend, you have a 98 millisecond sprint to fire, which is pretty damn quick, and compare that to the Lockwood 680, which is basically double that with 175 milliseconds. It's pretty noticeable on these guns, especially if you go from the Lockwood to the Brysons. You're gonna notice they feel just a lot more snappy, which is super nice when you're trying to weave in and out of cover and get your shots off quick. Also, I want to point out that the 890 got a time to kill adjustment a while back, since its fire rate did catch a little bit of a buff. Now I do want to mention the time to kills briefly, even though for pump actions it's not super important because it's more about finesse and movement and being in and out of cover, so time to kill doesn't always matter. But here it is. Basically with that light bolt attachment on the Lockwood 680, your time to kill is roughly 674 milliseconds for 2-shot. For the Bryson 800 with that demo X50 tactical pump, it's about 760. With the 890 and its rate of fire boost and the demo X50 tactical pump, it's about 722. So the difference isn't crazy with the Bryson 890, but it is noticeable, and the Lockwood 680 definitely wins in this regard. But hopefully you guys are starting to see that the Bryson 890 in particular is actually really damn solid, because it has great mobility. That sprint to fire speed is amazing. A solid 2-shot potential, 8 pellets, and this thing has 8 rounds by default with a magazine. So the 890 is actually shockingly good, and even the Bryson 800, which is one I generally prefer just because I like the feel of it, is super solid, and it has access to that nice rifled barrel, and it gets a nice tight spread, and of course 8 pellets as well, and still a better sprint to fire speed than the Lockwood 680. So in terms of the best class for the Bryson 800, this is what I landed on. It's basically similar to what we had in Warzone 2, but the only difference is we're rocking that Verdant hook cylindrical laser. That's because it gives us a very nice spread, attack stance spread, but also it helps with your sprint to fire speed. This is the laser I landed on, and of course when you aim, that laser does disappear, so that's super nice. Everything else is pretty much standard, and for the Bryson 890, this is probably the better of the two shotguns in most cases. If there was a lot more of a range differential, I would say that the Bryson 800 might get that, but the Bryson 890 is, like I said, shockingly good, and this is the loadout I have for that. Again, the Verdant hook cylindrical laser, great laser to run on these things, and they're very, very good. So at the end of the day, which pump actions are better, the two Modern Warfare 2 ones or the Lockwood 680? And really, it comes down to just sort of what you're trying to do. In general, if you're just being really aggressive and trying to get up close to people, the Lockwood 680 can be very good, but its sprint to fire speed can be a little bit bad for some people and can lead you to some frustrating engagements where you feel like you got caught with your pants around your ankles and you just kind of die because you thought you were getting your shot off, but you didn't quick enough, and they just melt you with their Ram 9 or their HRM or what have you. But the Brysons have better 3-shot potential. They have great damage consistency at ranges. They have 8 pellets rather than 6, and that sprint to fire, chef's kiss, is amazing, and it makes these things feel so snappy, especially if you're used to that Lockwood 680 and its sprint to fire speed. So in general, I would say that overall these pump actions are amazing. All 3 of them have their great perks, but I think that if you're going to be a really aggressive player, you might want to try the 890 because the rate of fire isn't far off from the Lockwood 680. 8 pellets, 8 rounds by default, great mobility, great sprint to fire speed. It's just a great shotgun. I had such a blast using these things, and honestly, I think I'm going to start using these things more often in place of the Lockwood 680 just because, again, they feel so much snappier and they feel much more consistent with having 8 pellets and great damage at range. So that's pretty much going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you guys learned something interesting about these shotguns, and I hope it surprised you that these things, the Brysons, are actually damn disgustingly good. And I promise you guys, if you've been using the Lockwood so much in Warzone, switch it out. Try these Brysons, and I promise you, you're going to have a fun time. Just remember to be mobile, be in and out of cover, and make sure to slide cancel quite a bit. That's how you're really going to play really well with this thing. So now I want to know down below in the comments, what are your thoughts on the Bryson 800 and the Bryson 890 compared to the Lockwood? Do you still prefer the Lockwood 680? Are you like me and you're sort of starting to kind of defect to the other side and go towards the Brysons? And with all that being said, guys, I will see you in the next video.